Tonight we slip through the gauze of centuries, not to a battlefield or a royal court, but to the gentle, pre-dawn charcoal of a clearing in early Samoa. You are standing at the edge of a village, the air cool and damp against your skin, thick with the scent of wet earth and night-blooming flowers. The world is a study in deep blues and blacks, the outlines of rounded fail homes just visible, their thatched roofs sloping like sleeping shoulders. The only sounds are the distant, rhythmic sigh of the ocean against the reef and the chorus of insects that seems to vibrate from the very soil. But your attention is drawn to a single, orange eye winking in the gloom. It's the season's first cook fire, a humble cluster of flames coaxed to life from the smoldering remains of last night's vigil. This isn't just a source of heat, it's the waking heartbeat of the day, a promise of community and sustenance. You are about to be immersed in a culinary tradition with no sharp knives in the modern sense, no metal pots, and a distinct possibility of burning your fingers on a hot rock if you're not careful, a reality check as gentle as it is genuine. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You watch as a figure, silhouetted against the growing flame, carefully feeds slender sticks into the blaze. The firelight reveals not a roaring inferno, but a contained, purposeful core. This dawn fire is the progenitor of every meal to come today. Its primary job is to create the essential tool, the cooking rock. All around the village, in the soft earth near each family's cooking area, lie smooth, heavy basalt stones, river-worn and chosen for their ability to hold and radiate heat. The fire will be built directly over a cluster of these stones, heating them for hours until they glow from within, becoming the hidden engine of the umu, the earth oven. This is a widely accepted historical fact. The earth oven was the absolute cornerstone of Polynesian cooking, from Samoa to Hawaii to Aotearoa, a technology so effective and adaptable it traversed the vast Pacific. As the sky lightens from indigo to a soft pearl gray, the single fire begins to replicate itself. Other tiny points of light appear across the clearing, a constellation mirroring the one fading overhead. Each household sees to its own, but there's a shade, unspoken rhythm to it. You notice the fuel isn't just any wood. It's often the dried ribs of coconut fronds or specific, quick-burning timber that produces a clean, hot flame without excessive smoke that with stinging eyes and drawing complaints from neighbors still trying to steal a few more moments of sleep. The crackle and pop of the green wood is a percussive counterpoint to the waking bird call. And here's a detail that might surprise you. Starting this fire wasn't a daily grind of rubbing sticks together. They were masters of firekeeping, not just fire-making. A designated fire tender, often an elder with the solemn patience the role required, would be responsible for ensuring a bank of embers, a mumu, always smoldered in a special pit or pot. This living ember was nurtured, covered with ash, and coaxed to life each morning, a literal thread of continuous warmth connecting one day to the next, one generation to another. To let it die out was more than an inconvenience. It was a minor household calamity. The social role of this dawn activity is subtle but profound. The soft glow illuminates faces, not with the harshness of later sun, but with a forgiving, warm light. Low conversations are exchanged between households, a quiet coordination for the day's foraging, a comment on the weather, the gentle, grumbling humor of people not quite fully awake. This is the true beginning of the village's day, not with a shout, but with a gathering of warmth. You can smell the distinct, clean scent of burning pandanus leaf being added to one fire, a natural insect repellent to keep the morning bugs at bay, an ancient form of multitasking. Historians still argue whether the placement of these cooking areas, always slightly downwind of the main living fail, was purely practical for smoke dispersal or carried a deeper social meaning, subtly reinforcing concepts of cleanliness and spatial order within the village hierarchy. As you stand there, feeling the dawn humidity begin to lift, you understand that you are witnessing more than breakfast prep. You are seeing the first, quiet act in a daily ritual of transformation, where raw nature, stone, wood, food, will be patiently changed into culture, into community, into life itself. The stage, lit by fire, is now set. With the fires established and the stones beginning their long, slow absorption of heat, you can now properly see the world that will supply today's meal. The first true light of day reveals not a rugged wilderness, but a meticulously managed garden, a food forest shaped by generations of knowledgeable hands. You step away from the village clearing, and immediately you are enveloped. The air is different here, still, heavy, and alive. It smells of rich, decaying vegetation, of damp moss, of the sweet, almost yeasty perfume of unseen flowers. This is the vow, the forest, but to call it mere woodland is to call a library a pile of paper. Every plant you see, from the towering canopy to the fern at your foot, has a name, a purpose, and a season. Your feet sink slightly into a deep, soft mulch of fallen leaves and rotting wood. The ground is uneven, not with rocks, but with the purposeful mounds of tuber plants. Here, the sprawling vines of ufi, yam, spread their heart-shaped leaves like green blankets, their precious, starchy roots hidden deep below. There, the distinctive, hand-like leaves of taro, rise from muddy patches, their stems a palette of purples and greens. The cultivation of taro is a widely accepted historical fact central to Samoan life. These water-loving plants required careful management of wetlands and stream banks, creating a patchwork of terraced, muddy gardens that were the agricultural pride of a village. You run your fingers over the broad, waxy surface of a taro leaf, cool and strong as leather, and a bead of morning condensation rolls off, tracing a cold path down your wrist. Look up. The canopy is a laid tapestry. Slender, grey-trunked breadfruit trees, ulu, jostle for space with the elegant curves of coconut palms, nyo. This is no accident. The breadfruit provides the prolific, bread-like fruit that is the staple carbohydrate, while the coconut is the ultimate utility player, offering water, milk, cream, oil, fronds for weaving, and husks for fuel, a self-contained survival kit. Historians still argue whether the legendary canoe plants brought by the original settlers, like breadfruit, taro, and coconut, were so successful that they actually reduced the diversity of the pre-existing forest, or if Samoan horticulture integrated them into a more complex, layered ecosystem. Walking through this space, you'd lean towards the latter. You see useful shrubs like the tea plant, its long, colorful leaves destined for wrapping food, and the fragrant mosooi tree, whose bark and flowers scent the oil used in ceremonies. Even the weeds at your feet might be a variety of edible fern or a plant whose leaves, when crushed, soothe the burn. The genius of this landscape is its resilience. A hurricane might strip the fruit from the trees, but the resilient root crops, safe underground, would see the people through. The sun might beat down, but the layered canopy creates a cool, humid microclimate that conserves water and protects the delicate understory. You hear the soft plop of a ripe breadfruit hitting the soft earth, a sound of abundance. You notice the network of narrow, well-trodden paths leading in all directions, one down to the rocky coast, another to a freshwater spring, a third deeper into the forest for specific timbers or vines. This is the pantry, the hardware store, and the pharmacy, all in one. And it comes with its own soundtrack. The distant, hollow knock of someone tapping a tree for sap, the rustle of a rat, a potential, if not preferred, source of protein, scurrying through the undergrowth, and the ever-present, metallic chirping of the Pacific triller bird. It's a productive, busy, and humid world. You wipe your brow, already beaded with sweat not from heat, but from the sheer density of the air. You are surrounded by food, but none of it is ready to eat. Every single item requires knowledge, labor, and that patiently heating pile of stones back in the village to become something more than potential. The land provides, but it does not surrender its gifts easily. As the sun climbs, burning off the mist that clung to the food forest, the village shifts from a quiet collection of hearths to a hive of purposeful, decentralized activity. There is no grand muster, no chief bellowing orders. Instead, a fluid, ingrained division of labor unfolds, a daily dance where everyone, from the smallest child to the most seasoned elder, has a role in the singular objective, supplying the yumu. You don't go to a market, you become part of the supply chain. The rhythm is set not by a clock, but by the progress of the sun and, most importantly, by the stones slowly reaching their critical cooking temperature back in the earth oven pit. You find yourself following a group of children and adolescents, their laughter bright and sharp in the morning air. They carry simple, woven baskets and short, sharp digging sticks. Their destination is the muddy taro patches you saw earlier. This is not play, but pedagogy. Under the watchful, patient eye of an auntie, they learn to read the leaves, to identify which taro corm is plump and ready by the tilt and color of its stalk. You watch as a girl, her brow furrowed in concentration, works her stick into the mud beside a plant, levering carefully to avoid spearing the precious root. With a soft, sucking pop, it comes free, a muddy, hairy fist of starch. She rinses it quickly in a nearby stream, her hands moving with a practiced efficiency that belies her young age. The basket fills with these earthy treasures, along with a few yams from drier ground. This is the carbohydrate backbone of the coming meal, the literal heavy lifting done early. Meanwhile, you notice the young men and stronger women are heading in the opposite direction, toward the sound of the surf. They carry different tools, long, multi-pronged spears for fishing, finely woven nets, and simple handlines with hooks made of pearl shell or bone. The ocean is the other great larder, and harvesting from it requires different skills and, importantly, respect. You trail behind, arriving at the rocky shore where the turquoise lagoon meets the black volcanic rock. The water is startlingly clear. You can see the darting shapes of reef fish, parrotfish, unicornfish, the sleek silver flash of a trevally. But fishing isn't a free-for-all. There are tapu restrictions, often placed by the chief or high priest to prevent overfishing. A certain reef patch might be off-limits today to let stocks recover. A specific species might be reserved for a coming ceremony. The fishes scan the water, discussing the tide and the moon phase in low tones, their knowledge ecological and spiritual all at once. You see a man standing perfectly still, knee-deep in the lagoon, a spear held poised above his head. He is not just looking at the water, he is reading the refraction, calculating where the fish truly is, not where it appears to be. His body is a coiled spring of absolute focus. Then, in a movement faster than you can blink, the spear flashes down. There's a splash, a struggle, and he lifts the spear, a fat, silver fish writhing on the tines. It's a clean kill. Back on the shore, others are using a technique that seems almost like magic. They chew a specific nut or root, spitting the milky, toxic sap into tidal pools. The sap stuns the small fish and crabs, making them easy to collect, an early, effective form of chemical fishing. This is a lesser-known detail, a clever bit of protochemistry that speaks to an intimate understanding of their botanical resources. The catch is varied: fish, crabs, maybe an eel or two from a crevice, and handfuls of shellfish, giant clams, turban shells, all tossed into baskets lined with cool, wet leaves. Others, often the older women, are on a more subtle forage. They move through the edges of the forest and the village clearing itself, collecting what we might dismiss as garnish, but what they know is essential medicine and flavor. Here, a handful of wild peppers, fia, small and searingly hot. There, the bright green leaves of the futu tree, which will be used to wrap parcels of food. They gather citrusy wild limes, fragrant ginger root, and the vital young taro leaves, which, when cooked correctly, become the sublime spinach-like palusami. Nothing is wasted. A fallen coconut is collected for its water and meat. Even certain types of bark and flowers are gathered for their medicinal or preservative qualities. By mid-morning, the village is a stream of returning foragers, each contributing their haul to the central cooking area. The quiet dawn has given way to a gentle, productive hum. The stage is no longer just a set, the props have been gathered. All that's left is the main act of transformation, and for that, everyone now turns their attention to the heart of the home, which has been quietly, relentlessly, getting hotter. All those converging streams of provision, the muddy taro, the glistening fish, the baskets of greenery, flow toward a singular, humble-looking feature in the ground. This is the yumu pit, the beating heart of Samoan culinary tradition. It's not an oven as you imagine it. There's no dome, no door, no dial. It is, at first glance, simply a shallow, bowl-shaped depression in the earth, about the size of a large wagon wheel, its interior smoothed and packed firm from countless uses. But to see only a hole is to look at a symphony and see only sheet music. This unassuming pit is a masterpiece of thermal engineering, a slow-release heat battery that will cook an entire community's meal with nothing but rock, fire, leaf, and earth. You gather around it with the others. The morning's kindling fire has burned down to a bed of fierce, white-hot embers, and nestled within them are the basalt cooking stones, now glowing with a sinister, inner light. They look like miniature volcanic cores, radiating a heat that warps the air above them. This is the critical moment. Using long, green sticks as tongs, green so they don't catch fire themselves, a skilled handler, often the master of the household yumu, begins to carefully, reverently, move these stones. They are raked out of the embers and pushed to the sides of the pit, creating a flat, radiant floor of heat. Any remaining large embers are swept aside. The goal is a bed of pure, intense stone heat, without active flame that would scorch and burn. This is a widely accepted historical fact and a technological triumph. The yumu could reach and maintain temperatures between 300 and 400 degrees Fahrenheit, perfect for slow, steaming, flavor-concentrating cooking. Now you witness the first layer of the edible insulation. Someone brings over armfuls of broad, green leaves, banana leaves, breadfruit leaves, or the versatile tea leaves. These are slapped, still dripping with morning dew, directly onto the searing hot stones. The reaction is immediate and dramatic. A great, loud hiss erupts, and a massive plume of fragrant steam billows up, smelling of cut grass, chlorophyll, and damp earth. The leaves don't burn, they wilt and char at the edges, creating a protective, moist barrier between the food and the scorching rock. This steam is the primary cooking medium. It's what will transform the hard taro into soft, pudding-like goodness and turn the tough pork into falling-apart tenderness. You feel the wave of humid heat on your face, a stark contrast to the dry heat of the fire. The assembly begins, a rapid, orchestrated ballet. The largest, densest items go in first, directly onto this steaming green mat. The whole taro corms and yams, the bundles of breadfruit. They are placed with strategic gaps between them. Then comes the protein layer, the whole fish, wrapped in more leaves, the shellfish in their own little parcel, the chunks of pork, if there is any, seasoned perhaps with a little salt from evaporated seawater. More green leaves are laid over this, another great hiss of steam. Then, sometimes, a layer of grated coconut or breadfruit paste for puddings, wrapped in leaf packages so intricate they look like origami. Historians still argue whether the specific order of layers was strictly codified by ritual or was more of a practical, cook's choice situation based on what was being prepared that day. Watching the confident, swift hands of the Yumu master, it seems both ritual and practical, a knowledge so deep it's instinct. Finally, when the food mound is complete, it is entombed. More leaves, whole fronds this time, are draped over the entire mound like a thick, green blanket. Then, the pièce de résistance, old mats, sacks of loose earth, and sometimes even a layer of burlap-like woven cloth are piled on top, sealing in every precious jewel of heat and every molecule of steam. The Yumu vanishes from sight, transformed into a modest, slightly smoking earth mound. The work is done. The frantic activity of preparation gives way to a sudden, pregnant quiet. The most advanced cooking technology in early Polynesia now looks like a slightly disturbed patch of garden. You are left staring at a dirt pile, but you can feel the power within it, hear the faint, subterranean sizzle, smell the tantalizing aromas of leaf and earth, and beginning to cook food that escape from the edges. The genius of the Yumu is its beautiful passivity. Once sealed, it requires no tending, no fuel, no worry. It simply cooks. And you, along with the entire village, are now in the hardest phase of all, the wait. While the Yumu works its slow magic, its earthy mound a quiet promise of the feast to come, your attention is pulled back to the source of the ocean's bounty now buried within it. The reef and lagoon are not just a grocery store, they are a dynamic, perilous, and deeply respected kingdom with its own rules. You join a smaller, more focused fishing expedition that heads out beyond the calm lagoon, toward the deeper channel where the ocean proper heaves against the living coral wall. This is where the larger prey, the tuna, the wahoo, the prized mahi-mahi, patrol. The canoe you're in is a masterpiece of its own, a sleek VO, an outrigger canoe, its hull hollowed from a single breadfruit log, its outrigger a graceful arm of bound bamboo that skims the surface, providing stability in the open swell. You can feel the Pacific's immense, rolling power beneath the thin wood, a humbling sensation. The fishing methods here are different. They use heavy handlines of braided coconut fiber, with hooks that are works of functional art. Some are carved from mother-of-pearl shell, polished to an iridescent shine that might mimic a small fish. Others are ingeniously made from 2 pieces of bone or turtle shell, lashed together at an angle to form a wicked, barbless point. Barbless, because the skill is in the steady, relentless pull, not a yanking hook set. The bait is often a live flyer fish or a carefully crafted lure of shell and feathers that dances in the water. As you let the line run through your fingers, feeling the vibrations of the deep, you're participating in a tradition of pelagic fishing that is a widely accepted historical fact of Samoan survival, a testament to their incredible navigational and maritime skills. They didn't just fish the reef, they hunted the open ocean. But the relationship with the sea is governed by more than technique. There is tapu everywhere. You notice the fishermen speak in hushed tones, avoiding loud noises or sudden movements that might offend the ocean spirits. There are specific chants, siva, for attracting fish, and others for calming the sea. A sneeze or a stumble at the wrong moment might be seen as a bad omen, prompting a return to shore. Certain species are considered sacred to specific families or gods. Catching a turtle, fonu, is a moment of immense significance, not just a big meal. Its shell is for tools and ornamentation, its meat is a high-status food, and its capture is wrapped in ceremony. To take one without the proper protocols could bring misfortune. This spiritual dimension is the lesser-known detail that transforms fishing from a mere harvest into a form of dialogue with a powerful, animate world. The work is physically demanding and mentally taxing. Hours can pass with nothing but the sun's glare and the slap of waves against the hull. Then, a tug. Not a sharp bite, but a heavy, solid weight that feels like you've hooked the ocean floor that's decided to move. The line zips through your hands, burning if you're not careful. The fisherman beside you barks a short, sharp command, not of panic, but of focused intensity. This is the moment. You brace your feet, lean back, and begin the long, grueling retrieve, hand over hand, a test of endurance against a powerful creature of the deep. The line hums. The canoe might even be pulled along, the outrigger slicing a white wake through the blue. It's a battle of attrition, and the fish is stronger, but you have the grim patience of hunger and tradition on your side. Eventually, the silvery blue flank of a large tuna breaks the surface, thrashing. A swift, respectful blow to the head with a wooden club ends the struggle. It is hauled into the canoe, a breathtaking prize of iridescent silver and deep red gills. Back on the lagoon's edge, the processing begins immediately. Some fish will be eaten fresh, of course, wrapped in leaves for the yumu. But much will be preserved. Historians still argue whether the Samoan technique of fermenting fish in sealed pits, FAI, was independently developed or a technique brought with them from earlier ancestral homelands. You watch as some of the catch is cleaned, rubbed with sea salt, and laid on raised racks to be sun-dried and smoked over slow fires of coconut husk, becoming maigai, a hard, durable protein source for voyages or lean times. Every part is used. The guts become bait or fertilizer. The sharp bones become needles or tattooing tools. Even the scales, in some traditions, could be used for a rough kind of sandpaper. As you look from the vast, open ocean to the specific, careful hands processing its gift, you understand, nothing from the sea is taken for granted. It is a gift earned by courage, skill, and ritual respect, a balance of taking and honoring that ensured the lagoon's hum would continue for generations. With the ocean's volatile generosity secured, either fresh on the leaf or preserved on the rack, the focus swings back inland to a quieter, more predictable form of abundance. You find yourself standing beneath the canopy of the breadfruit tree, Ulu, its branches heavy with the knobbly, green orbs that are the true staff of life. If the sea provides the feast's highlights, breadfruit is the symphony's constant, grounding baseline. Harvesting it is a communal, almost celebratory act, but one requiring specific knowledge. You don't just pick a breadfruit, you read it. A man with a long, forked harvesting pole, often just a tall, slender bamboo with a natural hook at the end, moves from tree to tree, tapping the fruits gently. He listens to the thud. A dull, solid sound means it's still starchy and dense, perfect for the yumu. A hollow sound might mean it's overripe, better for fermentation or for feeding the pigs. With a deft twist of the pole, he snags the stem of a chosen fruit and gives it a sharp tug. It plummets down, and you are instructed to never, ever try to catch it. A ripe breadfruit can weigh several pounds, and catching it from that height is a one-way ticket to a broken finger or a bruised ego. You let it thump into the soft earth. The ground beneath the trees is littered with these fallen giants, a testament to incredible fertility. This prolific yield is a widely accepted historical fact that underpinned Polynesian expansion. The breadfruit tree was a virtual food factory, capable of bearing hundreds of pounds of nutritious fruit per season, making sustained settlement on islands possible. Now comes the processing, and this is where you see ingenuity in action. The breadfruit's tough, green, dimpled skin is inedible and full of a sticky, milky sap. For immediate cooking, the whole fruit, skin and all, will go straight into the yumu, where the steam will soften everything. But for other uses, it needs to be prepared. Using a sharp shell or stone scraper, someone begins to peel the skin away in long strips, revealing the creamy white flesh beneath. The sap coats their hands, acting as a natural glue. For a staple food called marsi, breadfruit would be peeled, sliced, and then laid on mats to dry in the sun for days, becoming hard, durable cakes that could be stored for years and reconstituted with water on long voyages. It was the original emergency ration. But the most iconic preparation is for poi or fala, the smooth, sticky paste. The peeled breadfruit is cooked whole in the yumu until utterly tender. Then, it's dumped into a large, wooden pounding bowl. This is where you might be invited to participate, with a clean, heavy pestle made of basalt. The rhythm is everything, a steady, circular, crushing motion. It's harder than it looks. The hot fruit is initially resistant, then yields into a gluey, elastic mass. As you pound, others add drops of water or coconut milk to achieve the perfect, smooth consistency. The rhythmic thunk-thunk-thunk of pestles in multiple bowls becomes a village soundtrack in the late morning. The resulting poi is bland on its own, a pure, mild starch. But that's its virtue. It's the perfect canvas for the richer flavors of coconut cream and savory accompaniments. Here's a lesser-known, slightly amusing detail. Dealing with the sap was a constant nuisance. That sticky latex from the breadfruit skin was incredibly adhesive and difficult to wash off. Cooks would often smear their hands with coconut oil beforehand as a barrier, or clean them afterwards with abrasive sand or the pith of certain ferns. Historians still argue whether the deliberate selection and propagation of specific breadfruit varieties with less latex was a focused horticultural effort or a happy accident of favoring trees that were simply easier to process. As you struggle to peel your 10th fruit, your fingers gum together, you definitely vote for the former. Yet, this minor annoyance was the price of true food security. When the breadfruit season peaked, the entire village operated in a state of productive frenzy, harvesting, peeling, pounding, drying, knowing that this work meant full bellies during the leaner months. The humble, ugly breadfruit wasn't just food. It was peace of mind, stored in the belly of the earth oven or on high, dry storage racks, a silent promise against hunger. If breadfruit is the steadfast starch and the seed the thrilling protein, then the coconut is the indispensable utility player, the magic ingredient that ties the entire culinary world together. As you finally manage to scrub the last of the stubborn breadfruit sap from your hands with coarse sand, you're directed toward the grove of palms that fringe the village. Here, the work is constant, rhythmic, and revolves entirely around the nyo. You watch a young man shimmy up a towering, slender trunk with nothing but his bare hands and feet, his body moving with a fluid, swaying grace that defies the tree's sheer verticality. He's not just fetching a nut, he's on a reconnaissance mission. He taps clusters, feels their weight, listens to the slosh of water inside. He selects specific nuts for specific purposes. The first and most urgent need is vine coconut water. The young, green coconuts he tosses down are not for eating, but for drinking. With a few precise machete strikes from a husking stake in the ground, the top is lopped off, revealing a clear, slightly effervescent liquid. You're handed one. The water is cool, slightly sweet, and astonishingly refreshing, a natural isotonic drink that replenishes everything the humid morning's labor has sweated out of you. This is not a luxury, it's the primary hydration for much of the village, especially when working far from fresh springs. It's a widely accepted historical fact that the coconut's water, sterile within the hard shell, was vital for survival on long ocean voyages, preventing dehydration. But the real culinary magic starts with the mature, brown husked nut. Once husked, a laborious process of slamming it onto a sharpened stake to tear the fibrous covering away. The hard inner shell is cracked open with a stone or the back of a blade. Inside lies the two-part treasure, the firm, white meat, and the smaller amount of coconut milk that sloshes within the cavity of a very fresh nut. The meat itself is eaten as is, a snack rich in fat and calories. Grated or scraped, however, it becomes the base for everything. Using a clever tool, a serrated shell or later, a low stool with a metal scraper called a tazi, a woman sits and scrapes the halved coconut against the blade, reducing the firm meat to a fluffy mountain of white flakes. This is hard, repetitive work, the shoulders rolling in a steady, practiced motion. Now, The transformation. The grated coconut is placed into a bowl made of fine, loose woven fiber, often from the husk itself. Hot water is poured over it. Then comes the squeezing. The fiber is twisted and wrung with strong hands, the muscles in the forearms standing out. What streams out is not the thin water from the nut, but pure, rich, white coconut cream, pele pele. This first press is the luxury product, used to finish dishes, to make the decadent F.A.O.Z. sauce for breadfruit, or to mix into palusami. A second press with more water yields thinner coconut milk, used for cooking and simmering. Nothing is wasted. The spent, damp coconut flakes, ote, are fed to the chickens or pigs, or sometimes mixed into other dishes for texture. Even the empty shell becomes a cup, a bowl, a ladle, or fuel for the fire. Here's a detail that underscores its total integration. The coconut palm also provided the primary cooking fuel for heating those stones. The dried husks, pulu, and the hard shells burned with a clean, hot, long-lasting flame, far superior to many types of wood. The fronds, lau, woven into baskets to carry the food or mats to cover the yumu. The trunk for building. The tree is a one-stop shop for civilization. Historians still argue whether the coconut's new perfect design for human use is a cosmic coincidence or a prime example of coevolution, where human dispersal and cultivation directly shaped the tree's propagation across the tropics. Sitting there, drinking the water, tasting the rich cream, and watching the empty husk be tossed onto the fuel pile, you feel less like you're using a plant and more like you're in a symbiotic partnership with a silent, generous, multi-limbed provider. Every part of the meal, from the fuel that cooked it to the sauce that dresses it, whispers the same word, nyo. The circle of provision widens from the sea, the trees, and the earth to encompass a more deliberate, domestic form of protein. Pigs. You hear them before you see them, a contented, guttural grunting from the shaded, brushy edges of the village, away from the main living and cooking areas. These are not the sprawling, pink beasts of modern farms. Early Samoan pigs, puae, were smaller, leaner, and darker, often brown or black, with long snouts and a bristly coat. They were nimble, intelligent, and surprisingly clean when given space. Their presence is a sign of status and planning. They are the original savings account, a living larder that requires daily investment. You approach the simple, open-sided pen, little more than a fence of lashed branches to discourage wandering, not imprison. The pigs roam a decent area, rooting in the soft earth for worms and fallen fruit. Their diet is a curated form of recycling. You see children tossing them the inedible parts of the morning's harvest: taro peelings, coconut husk scraps, the cores of breadfruit, spoiled starches that didn't make the drying rack. The pigs convert this waste into future protein and fat with enthusiastic efficiency. This systematic use of food scraps is a widely accepted historical fact of sustainable village life, a closed-loop system centuries before the term was coined. A pig was fed for months or years, not with dedicated crops, but with the literal leftovers of the human diet. Raising a pig is an exercise in delayed gratification and social calculation. A family doesn't just decide to eat a pig one morning. The animal is a significant asset. It might be raised for a specific, future ceremony, a wedding, the installation of a chief, a funeral. It might be used as a form of tribute or gift exchange between families and villages, strengthening social bonds. Because of this, the care of the pigs often falls to the men and older boys, a responsibility tied to the social and political sphere. They ensure the fences are sound, that the animals have shade and a wallow for cooling off, and that they are protected from dogs or, in very rare cases, theft, a serious offense. When the time comes for a pig to be prepared for the yumu, it is done with a swiftness and respect that belies sentimentality. The method is a sharp blow to the head, a quick kill to minimize suffering and, just as importantly, to preserve the quality of the meat. Then comes the meticulous preparation. The carcass is scalded with hot water to loosen the bristles, which are then scraped off with shells or sharp stones, leaving the skin clean and smooth. This is crucial. The skin, when cooked in the yumu, becomes a delicacy, crispy, gelatinous, and deeply flavorful. The gutting is careful. The entrails are cleaned and often cooked separately or used as sausage casings. Every single part is utilized. Here's a lesser-known detail that might shift your perception. The favorite part, the prime cut, wasn't necessarily a ham or a shoulder. It was often the puere tunu, the whole pig cooked in the yumu. But the most prized portions were the head and the offal, the liver, heart, and kidneys. These were considered rich in mana, life force, and were often reserved for chiefs or elders. The fatty, melting texture of the cooked brain or the rich, iron taste of the liver were the true marks of a feast. Historians still argue whether the predominance of smaller pigs indicates a deliberate breeding strategy for manageable size and faster maturation, or if it was simply the natural result of the island environment and available food sources. Watching these active, vocal creatures root through their breakfast of peelings, you understand they are not pets, nor are they mere livestock. They are partners in a reciprocal economic loop, transforming waste into wealth, and their ultimate contribution to the feast is a solemn, celebratory transaction, the culmination of a long, careful investment. The scattered bounty is now assembled, the root crops cleaned, the fish scaled, the pig prepared, the coconut cream pressed. All eyes return to the quiet, smoking mound of the yumu. The waiting period, a slow stretch of time filled with other chores and low chatter, now culminates in the ceremony of the unveiling. This is not a casual check to see if dinner's ready. It is a deliberate, skilled performance, the climax of the day's culinary narrative. The master of the yumu, usually the senior woman of the household or a designated cooking expert, takes center stage. She approaches the earthen mound not with haste, but with the solemnity of a surgeon. First, the outer layers are carefully removed. The mats and sacks of earth are peeled back, releasing a great, fragrant sigh of superheated steam and the rich, primal smell of cooked leaf and earth. The green blanket of fronds beneath is now browned and wilted, fused in places to the food it protected. Using those long, green sticks again, she begins to gently probe, lifting the corner of a leaf layer. A cloud of aromatic steam billows out, carrying the unmistakable scent of cooked taro, earthy and sweet, mingled with the savory perfume of pork fat and the briny hint of ocean fish. It's a smell that bypasses thought and goes straight to a deep, hungry part of your brain. The skill now is in diagnosis. She must determine if everything within this light package is perfectly cooked, without disturbing it all and losing the precious heat. She might pinch the side of a breadfruit parcel through the leaves, feeling for that yielding softness. She might listen for the faint, steady sizzle that indicates moisture is still turning to steam. This is a widely accepted historical fact of the yumu's perfection. Because it cooked with steady, enveloping, moist heat, it was almost impossible to burn the food. The risk was undercooking, particularly the dense root vegetables at the core. A misjudgment meant recovering the oven and waiting another hour, a minor social disaster when hungry families are watching. Satisfied, she gives a nod. Now the unveiling quickens. The leaf layers are pulled back, revealing the treasures within. The taro and yams have turned a deep, uniform gray, their skins split to show the soft, almost gelatinous flesh inside. The breadfruit has darkened, its skin blistered and blackened, the interior transformed to a creamy, golden mass. The leaf-wrapped parcels of fish and pork are gently opened. The fish is opaque and flaky, steamed in its own juices with maybe a slice of wild lime. The pork, especially the fat and skin, glistens, tender enough to pull apart with the fingers. The sight is a masterpiece of textural contrast. The soft, the flaky, the gelatinous, the firm. Here's a delightful, lesser-known detail. Among the first items retrieved from the steaming depths are often a few small, specially wrapped parcels. These aren't for the chiefs or elders, but for the children who have been hovering with impatient hunger. A small packet containing a single shellfish, a slice of taro, or a bowl of breadfruit paste is pulled out, given a moment to cool on a leaf, and handed over. It's a pacifier, a reward for patience, and a way to keep small hands from darting into the sacred cooking space. Historians still argue whether the theatrical, communal unveiling of the yumu served a purely practical purpose of portion control by the cook, or if it was a deeply social ritual reinforcing the cook's status and the community's shared dependence on the earth's bounty. As you watch the steam rise into the late afternoon light, the cook directing the distribution with quiet authority, and the children happily blowing on their hot prizes, the answer feels perfectly clear. It is both. The yumu is opened, and its wealth is revealed. The long transformation from raw to cooked, from individual effort to collective provision, is complete. All that remains is to eat. The food, now liberated from its earthy womb, is transferred swiftly onto fresh, clean mats woven from pandanus or coconut fronds, laid out in the open-sided fail teli, the community meeting house. This isn't a free-for-all buffet, it's a distribution choreographed by custom and status. The yumu master, her authority now absolute, directs the flow. The largest, finest taro corms and the best cuts of pork, the head, the tenderloin, are set aside on a special mat. This is the Aga portion, for the head of the extended family and any honored guests or chiefs present. Other shares are assembled for other family groups within the village. The system ensures everyone is fed according to their place, a social safety net woven from tradition. You receive your portion on a broad, fresh leaf that serves as both plate and wrapper. You sit cross-legged on the woven floor, the aroma enveloping you. Your meal is a landscape of textures and tastes. There is no cutlery. Your hands are your tools, and you'll quickly learn the technique. A pinch of the soft, steaming taro, a piece of flaky fish, a dip into a communal coconut shell bowl of pele pele, the thick, rich cream. The taro is subtly sweet and incredibly smooth, almost sticky. It acts as a carrier, a bland but comforting base that soaks up the flavors it's paired with. The fish, simply cooked with maybe just a leaf and its own juices, tastes profoundly of the sea, clean and moist. But the true stars of the flavor world are the sauces and preparations that turn this simple assembly into cuisine. You taste palusami for the first time. It's a parcel made from young taro leaves, the ones you saw gathered earlier, laid with onions, a later introduction, but in early times, wild chives or other aromatics, and drenched in that luxurious first-press coconut cream, then steamed in the yumu until the leaves collapse into a silky, spinach-like green and the cream thickens into a savory, nutty sauce. It's rich, decadent, and utterly ingenious. Then there is efe pieces of cooked breadfruit or taro, served with a small bowl of coconut cream that has been caramelized with sugar from the tea plant, sugarcane, until it becomes a sticky, toffee-like sauce. The contrast of the mild, soft starch and the sweet, unctuous sauce is a form of edible poetry. This use of coconut cream as both a savory sauce and a dessert base is a widely accepted historical fact of Samoan culinary sophistication, showcasing their mastery of this single, transformative ingredient. The eating is a quiet, focused activity initially, a deep appreciation of the day's labor finally realized. Conversations are low, punctuated by the sounds of enjoyment, a soft hum, a satisfied sigh. You notice how little is wasted. Fingers are licked clean. The bones of the fish are sucked of every morsel, then set aside to be boiled later for stock or crushed for fertilizer. Even your leaf plate, once emptied, might be tossed to the ever-watchful chickens or pigs, continuing the cycle. Here's a surprising detail about the social mechanics. While the distribution of the main proteins and staples is hierarchical, the consumption of the shared accompaniments like palusami or faorzi is often more communal and relaxed. A large coconut shell bowl of the creamy palusami sauce might be placed in the center of a family group, and everyone dips their taro into it, a literal breaking of bread, or taro, that reinforces intimacy. Historians still argue whether the strict protocols around food distribution were primarily about managing scarce resources in a lean environment or were fundamentally a language of social structure, a daily reenactment of kinship and rank. As you sit in the warm, fading light, your belly full, sharing a bowl of that incredible coconut sauce with those around you, the hierarchy of the initial distribution seems to melt away into the simple, shared pleasure of a good meal, well earned. The feast is both a mirror of society and a momentary reprieve from its strictures, all contained within the simplicity of leaf, starch, and cream. The daily yumu is a heartbeat, but there is another rhythm, a deeper, slower pulse that governs the life of the village, the ceremonial feast, or whānau. What you've experienced so far is the domestic scale. Now, imagine that process magnified 100-fold, transformed from sustenance into spectacle, from meal into political theater. A whānau feast is called for matters of grave importance: the visit of a high chief from another district, the settlement of a land dispute, the planning of a war party, or a major rite of passage. The entire village, often joined by neighboring communities, becomes a single organism dedicated to a single, colossal act of hospitality. You sense the shift in the days before. The normal foraging expands into organized expeditions. The men might coordinate a massive communal fishing effort, using large, weighted nets or even constructing a temporary weir to trap fish. Hunting parties go deeper into the forest. The women oversee the harvest of entire groves of breadfruit and taro patches, a logistical feat requiring every basket and strong back. The pigs destined for this event, fattened for this very purpose, are brought to a central holding area. The scale is staggering, a deliberate display of a community's wealth, organization, and, most importantly, its generosity, which is directly tied to its status and power. The earth ovens for a whānau are not the single, family-sized pits, but long, trench-like affairs, some large enough to cook dozens of whole pigs and hundreds of breadfruit at once. The heating of the stones becomes a public event, with teams of men managing multiple fires. The assembly of the yumu is a highly orchestrated public performance, with senior matai, chiefs, often overseeing the placement of the most prestigious items. The food is arranged not just for cooking efficiency, but for symbolic impact. A whole pig might be positioned at the head of the trench, facing a specific direction. Certain bundles of taro, tied with specific patterns of vine, denote which high chief they are intended for. This transformation of food into a symbolic language is a widely accepted historical fact of Samoan political life. To present a feast was to speak, and the quality, quantity, and presentation of the food conveyed specific messages of respect, alliance, apology, or ambition. As the feast is laid out after the cooking, the true politics unfold. The distribution is a meticulous, public enactment of the entire social hierarchy. Orators, tulafail, with their staffs of office, move among the mountains of food, calling out names and titles in elaborate, poetic language. Each chief and his extended family receive their precisely calibrated share, the size and content of which reflect their exact rank and relationship to the hosting party. A miscalculation, a perceived slight in the portion size or cut of meat, could undo the very piece the feast was meant to cement. It's a high-stakes culinary diplomacy. Here's a lesser-known, slightly amusing detail from such immense gatherings. With so many yumu trenches steaming away, The risk of a rogue pig or a hungry dog disrupting the proceedings was very real. Accounts suggest that teenage boys were often given the unofficial but critical role of Yumu security, armed with sticks to patrol the perimeter of the cooking areas, shooing away animals and overeager children. It was a duty of immense responsibility and minor glory. Historians still argue whether these monumental feasts were ultimately a net benefit to the community, strengthening social cohesion and redistributing wealth, or if they were a drain on resources that could create hardship in the following months, a form of conspicuous consumption that served the powerful. Sitting at the edge of such a vast, fragrant, and tense production, watching the serious faces of the orators and the anxious eyes of the cooks, you understand it is both a magnificent gift and a potent weapon, a full immersion lesson in how food, in the right quantities and the wrong hands, is never just food. Beneath the practical, visible rhythms of harvest, fire, and feast lies another, deeper layer, the spiritual one. In early Samoa, cooking was not merely a technical process, it was a sacred negotiation with the world. Every step, from the selection of a tree to the unveiling of the yumu, was touched by the concept of tapu and guided by the hope for mana, spiritual power and efficacy. You feel this shift not as a dramatic change, but as a subtle intensification of the care already present. The cook is not just a technician, she is a kind of priestess of the hearth, and her actions carry weight beyond the physical. Consider the act of taking. Before a tree is felled for its wood to heat the stones, a small prayer of thanks and explanation might be offered to the forest spirit, Itu o Levea Matua. Before fishing canoes are launched, a blessing is sought from the god of the sea, Tagaloalogy in one of his many forms, for safety and a good catch. This isn't superstition, it's an acknowledgement of reciprocity. The world is full of conscious entities, and taking their bounty requires acknowledgement and respect. A widely accepted historical fact is that specific foods were associated with specific gods and spirits. The turtle was sacred to the god of the ocean. The breadfruit was linked to legends of celestial origin. To prepare and consume these items without the proper protocols wasn't just bad manners, it was dangerous, potentially inviting sickness, bad luck, or the failure of future harvests. This spiritual dimension manifests in very concrete rules. There might be a tapu on certain foods for pregnant women, or for young men before a battle. The earth oven pit itself could be considered a charged space. During certain religious periods, the lighting of the yumu might be preceded by a specific chant to ensure the food would be blessed and nourishing, not just filling. The cook might have to observe personal tapu while preparing a chief's meal, perhaps refraining from conversation or ensuring she is in a state of personal cleanliness. The simple, practical act of covering the yumu with earth becomes a symbolic returning of the cooked food to the bosom of the earth goddess, Papa, for her final blessing of transformation. Here's a lesser-known detail that blends the spiritual with the practical. The use of specific leaves for wrapping wasn't just about availability. Certain leaves, like those of the futu tree or the tea plant, were believed to have protective qualities. Wrapping food in them was thought to shield it from negative spiritual influences during the vulnerable cooking process. It was a form of edible armor. Similarly, the placement of the pig's head facing east, toward the rising sun, in a ceremonial yumu wasn't just for show. It was an alignment with cosmic forces, an invocation of life and renewal for the event it was meant to honor. Historians still argue whether these food-related tapu were primarily a mechanism for social control, a way for priests and chiefs to regulate access to resources and reinforce their authority, or were a genuinely held belief system that provided a coherent, comforting explanation for the uncertainties of health, harvest, and fortune. Watching the cook pause, her hands resting on a basket of taro, her eyes closed in a moment of silent focus before she begins to peel, you see no hint of performative control. You see the focused serenity of someone who believes she is participating in a delicate, sacred dialogue. The kitchen is a temple, the fire is a conduit, and the meal is an offering that, if prepared with the right respect, will yield not just physical sustenance, but spiritual harmony. In this world, a burned meal is more than a mistake, it's a miscommunication with the divine. The sacred and the practical find their clearest expression in the division of labor, a system so ingrained it feels as natural as the sunrise. In the world of early Samoan cooking, gender roles are not just suggestions. They are the complementary pillars holding up the entire culinary edifice. You see this not as a hierarchy of importance, but as a deeply interlocking partnership, where each role is essential and respected, governed by custom and, often, by tapu. To step outside your role isn't just unconventional, it can be seen as disrupting the spiritual and social order. The domain of the yumu itself, from the moment the food is assembled for cooking to its final distribution, is overwhelmingly the sphere of women. This is a widely accepted historical fact. The senior woman of a household, the tausi, holds the ultimate authority over the earth oven. She selects the stones, directs the layering of the food, determines when it is cooked, and wields the serving paddle or leaf at the distribution. Her knowledge is vast and specific. The exact heat retention properties of different stones, the wrapping techniques for 100 different foods, the medicinal qualities of herbs steamed alongside the meal. This isn't mere cooking, it is a science, an art, and a position of significant domestic power. The tausi is the CEO of sustenance. Men's roles are defined by everything that leads to the yumu and follows after it. They are the procurers and the processors of the raw materials. The heavy labor of clearing land for gardens, the dangerous work of ocean fishing beyond the reef, the climbing of tall trees for breadfruit and coconut, the building and maintenance of the canoes and fishing gear, the raising and slaughtering of pigs, these are male domains. They also handle the initial processing of some staples, the arduous work of husking and grating coconuts in large quantities, or the pounding of breadfruit for poi once it's been cooked. Their work provides the canvas, the women's work creates the painting. This separation is reinforced by powerful tapu. In many contexts, it was forbidden for men to handle the yumu once the food was placed inside, or for women to go on deep-sea fishing expeditions. These weren't arbitrary rules, but were believed to protect the mana of both the activity and the people. A man interfering in the yumu might introduce an impurity that could spoil the food. A woman on a fishing canoe might offend the sea gods and endanger the crew. These beliefs cemented the roles, making them feel inevitable and sacred. Here's a surprising detail that adds nuance. While men did the initial coconut grating, the critical act of squeezing the grated meat to extract the precious cream was almost always women's work. The belief was that women's hands, through their daily work with food and children, possessed a gentle strength and a life-giving quality that could better coax out the rich pele pele. It was a subtle acknowledgement that their domain extended to the very essence of flavor and richness. Historians still argue whether this strict gender division was fundamentally about maximizing efficiency in a subsistence economy or was a cosmological principle, mapping the social world onto a belief system where male and female energies had to be kept in separate, balanced spheres to ensure cosmic and community harmony. Watching the village move through its day, the men returning from the sea as the women uncover the yumu, the two flows meeting at the mats where the feast is laid, you don't see oppression and exclusion. You see a complex, efficient, and deeply believed in dance, where both partners know their steps perfectly, and the meal is the music they create together. Time, in this world of earth ovens and sacred roles, feels cyclical, governed by seasons of fruiting and fishing, of ceremony and daily grind. But what happens when this world is gently, inexorably, brushed by something new? You see the first hints not in a dramatic invasion, but in the subtle accretion of novelty. Perhaps a whaler's ship puts in for fresh water, and in trade for taro and pork, they leave behind an iron nail. That nail, beaten flat and sharpened by the village smith, becomes a treasured knife, far superior to shell for peeling breadfruit. A new plant, maybe the lime or the pineapple from the Americas via other European voyages, finds its way into a chief's garden, then slowly into the yumu. The cooking stones still heat, the leaves still wrap, but the edges of the tradition begin to blur, adapt, and incorporate. The most profound early change is often in the tools. Metal, once introduced, revolutionizes preparation. An iron pot, traded for or acquired, can sit directly on the fire, allowing for new techniques like boiling or frying that were impossible or impractical with only the yumu. Suddenly, a quick broth can be made without committing to the hours-long earth oven process. Yet, the yumu doesn't disappear. It becomes specialized, reserved for the large batches, the ceremonial feasts, the foods that truly benefit from its unique, steam-infused alchemy. This adaptation rather than replacement is a widely accepted historical fact of Samoan resilience. They were selective adopters, integrating useful novelties into their existing framework rather than discarding it. Ingredients slowly shift. Salt, always available from evaporated seawater, might be joined by traded sugar. The wild peppers get competition from introduced chili plants. The chicken, which arrived with the original Lapita settlers, becomes more common. Yet, the core triad, seafood, root crop, coconut, remains unshakable. You might see a new twist on an old favorite. Maybe the palusami gets a slice of introduced onion in its creamy heart, adding a pungent sweetness. Or corned beef from a trader's tin, pisupo, eventually becomes a luxury protein folded into the traditional framework, cooked in leaves in the yumu just like pork. The method absorbs the new ingredient, baptizing it in smoke and steam. Here's a lesser-known detail about this era of quiet change. One of the most prized early European trade items wasn't weapons or cloth, but cotton drill fabric. This tough, durable material was perfect for making yumu covers. It was more reliable and reusable than the old mats and sacks, creating a tighter seal and improving efficiency. A modern material was literally enlisted to perfect an ancient technique. The spiritual beliefs also flex and adapt. While the old gods and tapu remain strong, particularly in rural areas, the new Christian religion, when it arrives, brings its own food-related rituals, grace before meals, Sunday feasts, that layer onto, and sometimes sit uneasily beside, the old protocols. The cook's prayer might change its addressee, but the gesture of gratitude remains. Historians still argue whether this period of contact and change should be seen as the beginning of the erosion of traditional Samoan culture, or as a testament to its dynamic, absorptive strength. A culture that could cook foreign influences in its own yumu and make them distinctly Samoan. Sitting at the edge of a village in the late 19th century, you'd smell the familiar, comforting scent of the earth oven, but you might also catch the faint, new aroma of something frying in an iron skillet over a separate fire. The rhythms are still there, the communal sharing is still there, but the notes of the song have gained a few new, complex harmonies. The tradition isn't a fragile artifact, it's a living process, and like any good cook, it knows how to taste and adapt. The journey from that pre-dawn fire to here, to the soft hum of a modern Samoan evening, has been a long, slow simmer, not a rapid boil. The world has transformed in countless ways. The roar of planes overhead, the glow of screens in some homes, the convenience of electric stoves and imported snacks. But if you know where to listen, and more importantly, where to smell, you can still hear and scent the old rhythms beating just beneath the surface. They have not vanished, they have retrenched, becoming the bedrock of identity in a changing world. Drive through a suburban Apia neighborhood on a Saturday morning. The sound isn't just of lawnmowers. It's the rhythmic thunk-thunk-thunk of a pestle in a mortar as someone pounds paugo, mashed green bananas, for breakfast. It's the sizzle and tremendous hiss of an umu being uncovered in a backyard, not out of necessity, but out of choice, a family celebrating a birthday, a graduation, a simple desire to connect with the taste of home. The earth oven is no longer the only way to cook, but it remains the right way to cook for matters of the heart. This persistence of the umu as the centerpiece of celebration is a widely accepted historical fact and a powerful symbol of cultural continuity. It is the culinary anchor in the stream of time. The gender roles, once rigidly defined by tapu, have softened and shifted with education and new economic realities. You'll see men expertly preparing an umu for their family, and women running successful restaurants. Yet, at a large, formal tuona Sunday feast, you will often still see the older patterns reassert themselves instinctively. The women coordinating the intricate assembly of the dishes in the kitchen, the men handling the carving and serving of the large roasted pig at the table. It's less a rule now and more a deep-seated cultural muscle memory, a dance remembered and performed because it feels right, because it honors the FAA Samoa, the Samoan way. The flavors themselves are a living archive. The palusami you can order in a restaurant is the direct descendant of the leaf-wrapped parcels you helped steam. The FAOZ is the same alchemy of starch and caramelized coconut cream. Canned corned beef, pisupo, has been so thoroughly adopted it feels ancient, simmered in coconut cream until it becomes something entirely its own, a testament to that absorptive power you witnessed in its infancy. The supermarket sells taro and breadfruit, but it's still grown in family plots using methods that would be familiar to an ancestor from 500 years ago. Here's a heartening, lesser-known detail. In many Samoan households, especially those overseas in the diaspora, the single most important item shipped from home or sought out in specialty stores isn't a souvenir or a flag. It's a sack of marsi, the hard, durable breadfruit cakes. It's the ultimate comfort food, a taste of resilience and history, a direct link to the preserved starch that fed voyagers across the Pacific. It's rehydrated and shared on special occasions, an edible thread connecting the present to a deep, nourishing past. Historians still argue whether the conscious preservation of these culinary traditions in the modern day is a form of active cultural resistance to globalization, or simply the enduring preference for what is undeniably delicious and familiar. As the smoky scent of a backyard umu drifts over a suburban fence, mingling with the smells of a neighbor's gasoline grill, the answer seems to be both. It is a quiet, persistent choice. A choice to remember that food is more than fuel. It is story, it is family, it is a language of belonging spoken in the oldest tongue of all. The shared meal, patiently transformed by earth and fire. The steam rises, as it always has. The leaves are unfolded. The stories are told. And in that simple, profound act of sharing food cooked the old way, time folds in on itself. The past is not a distant country. It is here, on the leaf, in the hand, in the quiet, satisfied silence that follows a good meal. The journey of the early Samoan kitchen never ended. It just found new hearths to call home. The scent of smoke fades now, not to nothing, but to a memory carried on a warm breeze. The hiss of the steam becomes the distant shush of waves on a reef you can no longer see. The vibrant greens of the forest, the sharp blues of the lagoon, soften into the gentle palette of twilight behind your own eyelids. You have walked with bare feet on damp earth, felt the heat of stones that held the sun's fire, and tasted the first, rich press of cream from a cracked shell. The intricate dance of a world that found profound meaning in the simple, patient transformation of food is now a part of you, a quiet echo in your own stillness. The stories of those kitchens, of sacred hands and ocean canoes, of earthy mounds and communal mats, were not just about survival. They were about grace. The grace of a people who listened to the language of leaves and tides, who understood that to cook was to converse with the very world that sustained them. That conversation, in 1,000,000 backyards and 1,000 loving kitchens, continues its gentle, unbroken rhythm. It is a rhythm as old as fire, as deep as the roots of the ulu tree, and as enduring as the seas return to the shore. So let the images soften and blur, like the edges of a dream upon waking. Let the knowledge that such care, such connectedness, exists and has always existed, be a comfort. The world outside your window may spin at a different speed, but here, in the quiet dark, you have touched a time where everything that mattered could be wrapped in a leaf, cooked with the earth's own breath, and shared with open hands. Carry that warmth with you into sleep. Let it be a gentle, nourishing weight on your chest, a steady, calming beat that lulls you deeper, reminding you that sometimes, the most profound histories are not written in stone, but steamed in leaves, and remembered in the quiet, contented sigh after a feast is done.